Welcome to The Straight Stitch, a podcast about sewing and other fiber arts. This is episode 63, and my name is Janet Szabo. I'll be your guide as we explore all things sewing. Happy 2025! I am actually excited for the new year. I don't mean to be a Scrooge because I don't want to ruin it for other people, but Christmas is very difficult for me. I am a church pianist, and between the special music and the choir piece that we always do, Christmas has always been a very difficult season for me. It's always very stressful, and I am relieved and grateful when it's all over and I can get back to my normal routine and start organizing and planning for the new year. This is also typically the time of year when I have the most amount of time to sew, and that always makes me very happy. I talked a little bit about my plans for this year, and we'll see how things have started off for me. I've got quite a few classes on the schedule. This coming Tuesday, I'm teaching a serger mastery class. The following Tuesday, I'm teaching my All About Thread class, which is great fun. I've taught that locally. I've taught it in Missoula. I'm going to be teaching it at Sew Expo this year in Puyallup in February. And I'm a Wonderful ambassador, so I have lots and lots of great things to say about Wonderful Thread. And they worked with me to put together a thread kit of 6 sample spools of their threads, representative of their lines. They have over 36 thread lines, I think they're up to now. So 6 is just a small fraction of what they have available. But we tried to choose threads that would give sewists an idea of what is available to them. And they range anywhere from a 12-weight thread to an 80-weight thread. And I provide the materials. I give each of the students some 5-inch squares that have a little bit of light interfacing on the back to stabilize them. And we do stitch outs with decorative stitches on their machines and try out each of the different threads. And it's always a lot of fun. At the end of the month, I am teaching a class on using rulers with the sit-down long arm machines. The store where I teach is a Bernina dealer, and I have a Bernina Q20 long arm, but it's in a table rather than in a frame. So when I quilt, I'm moving the fabric rather than moving the head of the machine. And I do enjoy ruler work, so I'll be teaching that class at the end of the month. Then next month, I'm going to be teaching the Noodlehead Woolen Wax Tote. Our store has started carrying waxed canvas, and the owner asked me if I could teach a class on that, and I immediately thought about the woolen wax tote because it's such a great introductory pattern for people who have never worked with waxed canvas before. And I know a lot of people in our valley have recently purchased the Burnett BO8, the heavy-duty sewing machine, and so this will be a great class to get them used to using their little baby industrial machine. I shouldn't call it a baby. It's very capable. It's just a lot smaller than my Juki 1541, but from what I've seen and from what I've been able to experience for myself, it is a very powerful industrial machine that will allow people to make bags and do heavy-duty sewing and things like that. And then at the end of February, as I mentioned, I will be teaching at Sew Expo in Puyallup, Washington. If any of you are planning to be there, please let me know ahead of time. I would love to get together. I'll be teaching mostly knitting classes, but I'm also teaching the thread class. Now, what have I been sewing? Well, let's see. In December, I made 2 more hoodies for my friend Susan's grandsons. The first 2 hoodies I made for them, I made them rather generously sized. I haven't sewn for little boys for a while, so I didn't want to make them too small, but I think I went the other direction and made them a little too big. So I said that I would scale back a size. And so I made them 2 more hoodies, and those seemed to fit really well. They had them on the day that I gave them to them at church. And for those hoodies, I use the Peekaboo Patterns Kids Adventure Jacket, which is a great pattern. I am probably going to be making them hoodies until they're in high school, and then I can graduate to the adult size. It's a very well done pattern, except for one minor little quibble that I have with it, which is what prompted today's episode topic on zippers, and I will get to that in a little bit. I made a few zipper pouches to give as gifts for Christmas, and I also decided after Christmas to make the Kanoko tote from Waffle Patterns, and I just finished that this morning, so I'll talk a little bit about that. I make a distinction between what I call potato chip sewing and really challenging sewing. Potato chip sewing is when I need a top to wear to church on Sunday, so I go stash diving on Saturday afternoon and pull 2 yards of sweater knit out of my stash and whip up a top that I can wear to church on Sunday. That's potato chip sewing. Challenging sewing is the project that requires me to take a couple of days and go very slowly and maybe learn a few new techniques along the way. And the Kanoko tote was definitely that project. The last project I did like that was the Slabtown backpack from Klumhouse. I really enjoy those kinds of projects because they require me to slow down and really sink my teeth into what I'm doing. The Kanoko tote also gave me an opportunity to use my industrial machines. I have a Necky BV, which is an industrial Necky, and it came out of a department store in Salt Lake City. When I got it, it did come with a motor, but I took the motor off and I actually put the head into an industrial treadle table. So that machine is people powered. It sits here in my office and it fills a niche between the really, really heavy duty sewing that I have to do on the Juki 1541 and lighter things that I can do on my Bernina 880. So it fills a really unique spot in my sewing machine lineup. And I've always said if the house were burning down, I would figure out some way to get my little Necky BF sewing machine and my Necky BV sewing machine out, because I really love both of those machines. About a year ago, almost a year ago, it was back in March, I was fiddling with the tension on the Necky BV, which has always been a little bit difficult, and I broke the tension stud. And the Necky BVs are rare enough that there are no parts machines. I even looked on eBay in Italy to see if perhaps somebody there was parting a machine out that I could use the tension stud from. Unfortunately, they've changed the style of the tension mechanism over the course of their different models, so I couldn't even pirate one from one of my other Neckies, and I have quite a few Neckies. So what I ended up doing was over the summer, I took the part to a machinist in Spokane who made me a replacement tension stud. And if you know any machinists, give them a big hug because they make the world go round. And I have been able to get my Necky BV up and running again. I've got the tension dialed in perfectly. It sews beautifully, and I'm a happy camper again. I also fiddled a bit with the servo motor on my Juki 1541, and I managed to slow it down to the slowest speed, which is 200 revolutions per minute, and that's still pretty fast. I took the finger guard off of it because the finger guard doesn't work with the presser foot that I like to use. I got a narrow presser foot. I like to use those on all my industrial machines, and the finger guard wasn't compatible with that foot. So I took the finger guard off. So I have to be really careful when I'm sewing on the 1541, because if I step too hard on the gas pedal, it'll take off. And if my fingers are in front of the needle, that could be a disaster. So I've gotten very good about keeping my fingers to the side and not in front of the needle. And I also adjusted it so that the needle stops in the down position. When I was futzing with the speed a couple of months ago, I toggled something and the needle was stopping in the up position, and I prefer to have it down in the material. I realize that we're already 10 minutes into the podcast and I still haven't gotten to the main topic, but the Kanoko tote does have something to do with the main topic. So that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I'm going to talk about it a little bit more as we get further into the podcast. I have kind of mixed feelings about the Kanoko tote now that it's done. The reason I started that project was because I need to replace my travel tote. I have a travel tote that I bought from either LL Bean or Land's End over 30 years ago. It's older than my daughter, and it's held up very well, but it's starting to show signs of wear. And I've been looking for a pattern that I could possibly hack into something similar because I don't want to design it from scratch. And the Kanoko tote looked like a good place to start. So I wanted to make that pattern start to finish. I did the large version. I did it out of some waxed canvas that's been in my stash for probably 3 or 4 years. And it was very stiff and very difficult to work with. I might make that tote again sometime with a thinner fabric or a more pliable fabric. It's a useful bag. I know I'll use it, but there are some things that I would change about the pattern. Some of them are my fabric choice, but also some of them are some of the design elements. So let's talk about zippers. Part of the reason I wanted to do this episode was because I went to make the kids' adventure jacket and I was gathering my supplies. So I had the supply list from the pattern and it said to get a separating zipper, and that was it. Those were the only instructions to get a separating zipper. I went to Joann Fabrics and I bought a coil, nylon coil separating zipper. And the pattern said that it was best to get a zipper in a longer length than what you needed because you could cut it down for the size that you needed. Each size uses a different length of zipper. And if you've been to Joann Fabrics and looked at their selection of zippers, you know that zippers come in some standard lengths. And if you want a 13-inch zipper, you're going to have to start with a longer zipper and cut it down in some way. So I brought home these coil zippers and I was reading the instructions in the pattern for shortening the zipper, and it said to pull the teeth off with a pair of pliers. Well, I tried to do that and they didn't come off. Now, some of you are probably laughing, but one of the things that you need to know about me is that I am a very concrete, sequential person. So if you tell me to get a separating zipper and to shorten it by pulling the teeth off, I'm going to do that. Eventually, after I destroyed a couple of zippers, I realized that the pattern really should have specified a metal separating zipper, not just a separating zipper, but a metal separating zipper. I'm trying to give the pattern writer the benefit of the doubt because I have written lots of patterns and I understand that it's not easy to write a pattern. But those are the kind of details that really set a pattern apart. So once I figured out that the pattern required a metal zipper, I had a dilemma because I don't like to use metal zippers in kids' clothing. I just think that the tendency for kids to get scratched or, they're just not comfortable for little kids. So I decided to figure out how to use the coil separating zipper. And in order to do that, I had to figure out how to shorten it. I have shortened nylon zippers before. I'm not a zipper novice. I've made lots of zipper pouches. I've made a couple of Biani bags. I've put zippers in lots of things, but I was rather astounded to find out how much I didn't know about zippers and how much I think information sometimes is taken for granted. So I started looking for YouTube videos on how to shorten a nylon coil zipper, and I found one that was very helpful. I'll try and find it again on YouTube and link it in the show notes. But basically what you have to do, the nylon coils are sewn onto the zipper tape with polyester thread. And what you have to do is get between the nylon coils and the zipper tape and cut that polyester thread. And if you cut the polyester thread stitch by stitch by stitch, the nylon coils fall off the zipper tape, and you can cut them down as far as you need to and leave the zipper tape intact, and then just snip off the nylon coil, which was what I needed to do for the adventure jacket because I needed the zipper tape to be intact without the coils on it, because it gets folded over to the back side of the zipper placket in the finishing step. So I couldn't just cut the zipper down to the size that I needed. I had to cut the coils off the zipper tape and make sure that the zipper tape stayed intact. I tried a couple of different methods to do that. I started with a seam ripper, which was a little too thick to get between the coils and the zipper tape. So I went and borrowed a razor blade from my husband's shaving supplies and used that, which worked reasonably well, except that the razor blade got very dull very quickly, and so I kept having to turn it around, and it was a double-sided razor blade, so I had two sides to use. But what ended up working really, really well for me was an X-Acto knife. So I have one of those very thin-handled X-Acto knives. It looks like a pencil with an X-Acto knife blade at the end of it. And I found that that worked the best, and the blade stayed sharp enough that I could cut multiple zippers. But that whole process sent me down a rabbit hole of looking for information about zippers and what kinds of zippers are available and what the applications are. So that's what I want to talk about. And I'm realizing that I'm getting far enough into this episode that I may end up doing 2 episodes about zippers, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so let's start by looking at the anatomy of a zipper. A zipper is made up of zipper teeth that are attached to a piece of tape. They have a slider, which is what opens and closes the zipper, and they have top and bottom stops. There are some variations on those anatomical pieces of a zipper that we'll talk about as we go along, but those are the basic components. So let's talk about the teeth. The teeth of a zipper are what interlock together to close the zipper. And the teeth can be made of nylon coil or metal or plastic, molded plastic. Nylon coil zippers are the typical ones that you would see for like making zipper pouches, or if you were doing a Biani pattern and you bought some of her zippers, those would be nylon coil zippers. The metal zippers have individual metal teeth that are embedded in the zipper tape. The molded plastic zippers have molded plastic teeth that are kind of chunkier versions of metal teeth. And these are the zippers that you would see on things like parkas, some sportswear, that kind of thing. If you've ever wondered, this is more prevalent, I think, in the bag making community, but I'm starting to see it bleed over into garment making. If you've ever wondered what the difference is between, say, a number 3 zipper, a number 5 zipper, a number 10 zipper, the number of the zipper is determined by the width of the teeth in millimeters. So if you're looking for a small zipper, you want a 3 millimeter zipper. If you're looking for a medium-sized one, a 5 millimeter zipper. Or a really chunky one, a 10 millimeter zipper. That's the width of the zipper teeth when they are closed, and that determines the size of the zipper. Once you've determined what kind of zipper teeth you want and what size zipper teeth you want, you have to consider whether you want a closed end or a separating zipper. A separating zipper is going to open up. It does exactly what its name implies. It separates. So those are the zippers that you need if you're making garments, outerwear, things like that, because you need to be able to get into that garment or that bag or whatever, and you need the zipper to open all the way. A separating zipper has what's called a box at the bottom, and that is the part into which you put the one side so that you can zip the zipper up. In a closed-end zipper, typically there is a little metal bar that fits across the teeth and is crimped onto the back of the zipper tape, and that functions as a stop. So when the slider gets to the bottom of the zipper, it can't go any farther. There is one other kind of zipper that has become more and more popular in recent years, especially with people who make bags, and that's called a continuous chain zipper. You might have seen these in stores. They usually come in a 3-yard roll, and what it is just a continuous length of zipper tape with separate zipper pulls, and the person using the zipper tape cuts the zipper tape to the appropriate length and attaches a zipper pull and is off to the races. So those are great for bags and pouches and places where you might be sewing a zipper tab onto each end, and where the design of the object that you're sewing is such that you don't need a top or bottom stop, because the stop is provided by a piece of fabric. And it might sound tricky to have to put that slider onto the zipper tape, but it's really not that difficult. I have seen a little gadget at one of the quilt stores that I go to in Spokane that helps people put sliders onto a continuous chain. I've also seen people use forks. There are lots of different things that you can do to get that zipper slider onto the zipper tape and make your zipper tape functional. Something else that you'll want to consider when you're choosing a zipper is the width of the zipper tape, because some zippers are narrower than others. In general, the narrower the teeth are, the narrower the tape will be. So just keep that in mind. If you need the width of the zipper tape to be a particular measurement, then you'll want to make sure that you take that into account when you're shopping for zippers. The slider is the part that makes the zipper operate. Without a slider, your zipper is going to be useless. On my husband's clothing, I'm usually replacing the zipper slider before I'm replacing the zipper. And a lot of times I've found people will bring things to me and say, the zipper needs to be replaced. And truly, the zipper doesn't need to be replaced. And if I can avoid taking a garment apart to put a new zipper in it, I will do that. A lot of times, all you need is a new zipper pull. And you can get zipper repair kits at Joann Fabrics, and there are other places online that sell zipper repair kits that have replacement pulls. So keep that in mind the next time somebody asks you to repair a zipper or replace a zipper in a garment. You'll want to make sure that you get the correct slider for the type of zipper that you have. So I noticed at Hobby Lobby a few weeks ago when I was looking for something that Dritz has different zipper sliders based on what kind of zipper you need to replace the slider on. So you can get one for a nylon coil, you can get one for a metal zipper. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And sometimes replacing the slider is as simple as taking off the top stops and putting on the new slider and replacing the top stops. Sometimes you'll need to get a little tool that looks almost like a key. It came in one of the Dritz zipper sliders that I purchased recently, and that opens the zipper slider enough that you can just pop it on to the zipper teeth without having to take the top stops off. Who knew that there was so much to know about zippers? I didn't. Most zippers only have one slider. The slider goes up or it goes down. You'll often see, though, for things like sleeping bags or purses, you'll get zipper tape that has two sliders. And the reason you have that is so that you can open it in either direction. My winter parka is a molded plastic zipper with two sliders, and I can zip it up and then reach down and undo the bottom of the zipper a few inches so that gives me some room when I'm sitting down in my parka, that I'm not putting stress on the bottom of the zipper. Now, those stops. The top stops and the bottom stops, depending on the type of zipper, they might be different. The top stop usually looks like a U-shaped piece of metal that slips over the zipper tape and is clamped down. And all that does is it keeps the zipper slider from sliding off the zipper tape. If you didn't have those top stops there would be nothing to keep the zipper from just flying off as you zipped it up. If you lose a top stop or you need to make one, you can buy replacement top stops in bulk. There are a lot of places that sell them in packages of 100 if you think you're ever going to need to fix that many zippers. You can also whip stitch a homemade zipper stop over the zipper tape. I've done this. I don't think it looks quite as nice as a metal zipper stop, but it's functional. It'll keep the zipper slider from popping off your zipper. In the same way, you can get replacement bottom stops. Again, they also come in packs of 100 if you think you needed to fix that many zippers. And you can get them in different metal finishes to match your zipper. So what happens if you have to shorten a zipper? I've already described what I had to do to shorten the nylon coil zipper for the kids' adventure jackets. I also had to shorten the zipper on the Kanoko tote. So the top of the bag has a recessed zipper with a facing, and the instructions were very clear. They were clear throughout the whole pattern, but they were exceptionally clear on this part that when you lay the zipper onto the zipper facing before you sew it on, you need to make sure that there's enough clearance at each end that when it comes time to assemble the rest of the bag, you don't risk running your sewing machine needle into one of the metal teeth or the top or bottom stop on the zipper. You can sew over a nylon coil zipper with a regular sewing machine. You cannot sew over a metal one. You can, but you risk hitting a needle with the teeth and throwing your machine out of time. So I don't recommend it because it can result in a fairly costly and extensive repair. So I was glad to see that in the instructions this was pointed out, and the instructions also said if you have to remove a few teeth from the zipper, go ahead and do that to make sure that you have enough clearance. In order to shorten a metal zipper, what you first have to do is take the top stops off, and I found this a bit frustrating. Several of the videos that I watched instructed me to get the tip of a screwdriver in between the prongs of the top stop and just pry it apart and pop it off. And I tried that with no success. I finally appealed to my husband and said, please help me with this. So we went and got I have a little Tecton plier set that's got, I think, 9 different miniature pliers in it. And he found the one that you use to cut wire, and he managed to slip it in between the prongs of that top stop and pop it off. If you do it correctly, you can reuse the stops. You also want to be careful not to cut or rip the zipper tape, because then you've got a problem. Zipper tape likes to fray, and any cut in the zipper tape will just keep getting bigger and bigger. So he was able to get the top stops off, and then he used another one of the little miniature pliers in my set to just cut the teeth off. And if you cut the part that protrudes off the zipper tape, if you cut that off, then the other part kind of falls off. So we cut the zipper down by 3 teeth on each side, and I took the zipper stops and I recrimped them onto the zipper tape, and I was ready to go. You can, believe it or not, do the exact same thing to a molded plastic zipper to shorten it. Again, you're working from the top, and you just need to cut those teeth off however many teeth you need to cut off, and then you need to replace the zipper stop. And an interesting technique that I have seen for replacing the zipper stop is to melt the remaining top two teeth together. So you can take a hot knife or something like that. I think one of the Sailrite videos I watched, they took a hot knife and they just melted those two top teeth together, and that created a zipper stop. Now, lest someone out there in the listening audience is saying to themselves, but what about invisible zippers? I left invisible zippers until the end because invisible zippers are kind of their own category. Invisible zippers are typically used in situations where you don't want the zipper to show. You don't want to see the exposed teeth of the zipper, so invisible zippers might be used in skirts or party dresses or things like that. I recently made the Ramona skirt pattern from Tilly and the Buttons, and that pattern also calls for an invisible zipper. So that was my first experience with inserting an invisible zipper. And the instructions in that pattern were excellent. They've also got a video, and I didn't have any trouble inserting that invisible zipper once I figured out that you can't let the zipper become a Mobius strip. So in the muslin that I made out of some navy blue cotton twill, I ended up having to take that invisible zipper out twice because I got the skirt all twisted. One of the things you need to know about an invisible zipper insertion is that you don't sew the seam all the way until you finished putting the zipper in. So a lot of times, I've seen this done, you might sew a seam using a basting stitch and then place the zipper face down over the seam and sew around it, and then take your seam ripper and rip those basting stitches, and you've got an inserted zipper with very little difficulty. But in an invisible zipper insertion, you're doing it one side at a time, and you need to leave the seam of the garment open, whether that's the back seam or the side seam or whatever. Unfortunately, as I was doing that, the skirt kind of torqued, and I ended up, when I put the second side of the zipper in, I realized that I couldn't close the zipper because the skirt was all torqued. It looked like a Mobius strip. So laugh with me because I laughed at myself. That was a really rookie move. I didn't do it on the second one because I was very careful to maintain the orientation. Invisible zippers benefit from being put in with an invisible zipper foot, and most sewing machines they either come with an invisible zipper foot or you can get one, and basically what it looks like is a zipper foot with a groove on the bottom of it, and that groove rides over the teeth of the zipper so that it keeps the zipper straight as you're sewing it into the garment. Invisible zippers aren't hard. I get a little frustrated when people say that this, that, or the other thing in sewing is difficult. There really isn't anything that's truly difficult. There are things that are time-consuming and that require attention to detail, but I wouldn't call anything in sewing difficult. It just requires that you practice or you use some specialized equipment like a zipper foot or an invisible zipper foot. When you are inserting a regular zipper, you will want to use a zipper foot. And these come in a couple of different flavors. On my Bernina 880, I have one that looks like a rectangle with a cutout on the left and a cutout on the right. And when I put that foot onto my machine, I can adjust the needle position so that it's either sewing on the right side of the foot or it's sewing on the left side of the foot. And that way I can always sew along the edge of the zipper and get as close to the zipper teeth as I need to without the bulk of the foot getting in the way. Now on my industrial machines, my right and left zipper feet are separate feet. So depending on which way I'm sewing, I'm going to want to use one or the other. You can also now get Teflon zipper feet, which are really slick. It used to be that if you were making a bag with, say, some faux leather or some vinyl, you would have to put a piece of cellophane on the bottom of your zipper foot or sew over some tissue paper or something, because otherwise the zipper foot might get hung up on that fabric and it would make your sewing look really awful. Nowadays, you can get Teflon zipper feet, and they will just glide smoothly over the surface of those fabrics, and you don't have to worry about them hanging up. I think that's about all I wanted to say about zippers. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it keeps you from having to reinvent the wheel, which is one thing that frustrates me to no end. It's one thing to go looking for information when you know that you don't have a piece of information. It's quite another thing to go looking for information when you don't know what you're looking for. And when you don't know what you don't know, that can be very frustrating. I think that's about all I wanted to say about zippers. It is quite possible that I have forgotten something. So if there's anything that I missed, please leave a comment or send an email. I do want to mention that at least for a few months, I'm going to try a different schedule to see how this works. I'm only going to be podcasting every other week. And if things go according to plan, on the weeks in between, I'll be sending out a newsletter. And I will have a place to sign up on my website to get the newsletter. And hopefully by the next episode, I will have that information for you and everything in place. I know not everybody reads my blog, but that's where I detail most of my sewing projects. So what I'm going to do is on the weeks that I'm not podcasting, I'd like to send out a newsletter that's got some pictures and some explanations of some of the things that I've been working on. So I'm hoping that it'll do two things. It'll give me a little bit of a break because a once a week podcast is a lot to produce, and it will give listeners a way of getting some more information about things that I talk about in the podcast other than just going to the show notes. So we'll try that for a couple of months and see how it goes. Again, if you want to provide feedback on anything, the quickest way to get a response from me is to email me at janet@janetzabo.com. You can also use the fan mail feature that goes to Buzzsprout, where I host my podcasts. You can leave a comment on the show notes page. There are lots of ways to provide feedback. I love to get feedback. I've gotten some really great suggestions on podcast guests, and I'm trying to make as many of those happen as I can. So keep the suggestions coming. And I think we will wrap it up there for today. So until the next episode, I hope you have a couple of good weeks and that you get to go sew something.